advice. Listen up, biatch.
The 1988 movie Heathers, which subsequently inspired a 2014 revival in the form of a musical, may seem like a Mean Girls-esque romp through high school, but the story actually manages to make relevant comments on mental illness in our society. In this video essay, I will be focusing more on the 2014 musical than the movie, and will be going through every example of surprisingly accurate social commentary. If you have not watched or listened to the musical, consider this your spoiler warning, as I will be going through many major plot points of Heathers. Enjoy. The viewer or listener of the Heathers musical is first introduced to this world through the 8-minute song, Beautiful, which delves into the horrible high school life of protagonist Veronica Sawyer, who finds herself in her senior year in 1989. The Heathers, three incredibly popular girls idolized for their money, looks, and power, are designed as caricatures of popular mean girls from American high schools. Each Heather wears a different characterizing color, with the leader Heather Chandler in red, despite being an obvious comedic exaggeration. As Heathers is technically a black comedy despite some serious plot points, Westerberg High School does show a social hierarchy present in many modern-day schools. But the real commentary presenting Beautiful is found in one offhand line during the Heathers introduction. Bulimia is an eating disorder characterized by victims eating before purging their food by forcing themselves to throw up, as Heather Duke is implied to be doing to herself. Today's society actually has made this somewhat of a concerning trend, with pro-eating disorder media encouraging young girls to eat less and less in order to maintain or lose weight. Peer pressure may see friends encouraging other friends to binge and purge, the defining characteristic of bulimia and an incredibly unhealthy habit. The sad thing is, many people normalize this through peer pressure and the aforementioned pro-eating disorder media. Eating disorders are serious and dangerous, and like in Heathers, people aren't taking them seriously. Heather Chandler tells Heather Duke to grow up, because bulimia is no longer in fashion. This actually reflects a disturbing and toxic occurrence which has happened in recent years. In 2017, many people suffering from depression or experiencing suicidal thoughts were told to get over it because depression was trendy in 2016. This highly normalizes, romanticizes, and takes away from the seriousness of actual mental illnesses like depression. People who pretended to be depressed or suicidal because it was trendy turned on those who actually were mentally ill after the trend had died, similar to what we see in Heathers. The sad truth is, interactions like the one in Beautiful are present in our daily life, and mental illnesses are being treated like trends instead of serious and concerning matters in our society. Next, let's take a look at the psychology of the antagonist of Heathers, Jason Dean, or JD. When Veronica and JD meet, they begin a fiery and passionate romance, which has a negative effect on JD's already concerning mental health. Over the course of their relationship, JD murders a total of 3 high school students and tries to blow up the school. Now, I want to make it clear that JD is suffering from severe trauma and mental illness due to his past, but his actions are not at all excused by those factors. JD still makes incredibly bad decisions and lets his poor mental health destroy him as a person. However, I would also like to point out the negative actions of those around him. Throughout the Heathers musical, JD repeatedly and directly calls for help and emotional support. In the song, Freeze Your Brain, he opens up about his trauma to Veronica, and is basically begging for her to help him or offer support. Instead of doing this, Veronica reacts with a mixture of surprise or indifference. After asking for help in this way many times, JD breaks down and gives in to his most dark desires, killing Heather Chandler and dragging Veronica down into a dark period in their lives and relationship. This reflects heavily on modern society, with mentally ill teenagers unwilling to directly admit to needing help. These teenagers, however, will imply a cry for help indirectly, and the ignoring of these pleas leads to a negative effect on their mental stability. It is a very major problem faced today, with teen suicide rates so high. It is in my opinion that people need to stop brushing off these pleas for help as untrue or a joke, and actually be aware of when their friends or family are suffering and need help. In the second major analysis of social commentary relating to JD, let's take a look into the romantic song, 17, in which Veronica realizes that their relationship cannot continue if JD continues to kill their classmates, and begs for him to see reason. Veronica, despite having fairly good intentions, is very wrong in this situation. She believes if she loves her boyfriend enough his problems will go away, and that their romance can overcome his mental problems. This does not work, and only makes JD worse. This is a disturbingly real trend in media and society, with the most recent and relevant example being the popular and controversial Netflix original series 13 Reasons Why. TRW came under fire by some due to its misrepresentation of depression, the empowerment of the protagonist through suicide, and its fear of actually saying the name of a mental illness out loud. In what the show presents as one of its most emotional and important moments, the surviving protagonist claims that if he had only loved Hannah, who killed herself, more, then she would be alive. This inspired the fandom to create all kinds of art, edits, and other media around the love and how that would cure depression and end suicide. The simple fact is that romantic love cannot cure a mental illness. Despite most of this video being my opinion, that is just a fact. Romantic love cannot cure mental illness. 13 Reasons Why operated under the misconception that it could, but Heathers does not labor under that delusion, which makes it a far less problematic piece of media. Next, we will examine the death of Heather Chandler, which is seen as a suicide to the public. First, it needs to be said that Heather is glamorized because of her death. Despite her popularity in life, her peers secretly hated her for her constant bullying of them. After she dies, they all forgive her and call her a good person, all seemingly implying to have been close to her in life. This may or may not happen frequently in real life, but it is another social problem represented accurately in Heathers. The death of any person, with the exclusion of very few, is a tragic event. However, Heather Chandler being dead does not make her a good person. In Heathers, Heather's ghost continues to harass Veronica, although this may be a product of Veronica's deteriorating psyche. The more important social examination which comes from Heather Chandler's death is the normalization of teen suicide. After Heather dies, her teachers and the school seem reluctant to do anything about it, hesitating to even cancel classes. One teacher comments that her suicide note is the loveliest suicide note she's ever read. Although this is mostly comedic, it does strike a note with the normalization of death and suicide in schools. Suicide is something schools are very afraid to talk about, and when it happens, it goes mostly ignored. With teen suicide rates so high, as I mentioned before, teen suicide can be sadly normalized. This cannot and should not happen in a normally functioning society. We as humans should not be taught to ignore the death of our peers. Instead, we should take a look inside us and at our society to see the problems that caused the death. Now, we reach a point in the video that I'm sure some viewers were expecting. We must discuss the two legitimate suicide attempts in Heathers, by Martha Dunstock and Heather McNamara respectively. Martha Dunstock is bullied constantly about her weight by the Heathers, and was also abandoned by Veronica, her former best friend, for the Heathers. After the boy Martha was in love with dies, Martha retreats into her fantasy world where this boy loves her, and consequently tries to kill herself so she can be with him forever. Bullying in our society has become worse than ever. With social media, bullies can target people anonymously, or personally by sharing their information. Bullies can spread rumors virtually, and torment victims at all hours. Martha's bullying is more face-to-face with the Heathers and other students, teasing her for her weight. Today, many students are bullied for their weight in similar ways. I highly support body positivity movements and am firmly against meddling in personal affairs such as a person's weight when you are not their doctor. The bullying and subsequent suicide attempt towards Martha in Heathers shockingly mirrors real life, displaying problems we have today in an all too real way. In the most serious and emotional section of the show, Heather McNamara goes through an attempted suicide. After finally building up the courage to speak about her suicidal thoughts in the song, Lifeboat, Heather M. is teased and taunted by her peers for having these feelings, chiefly Heather Duke. The school turns against her and ridicules her for what she has shared. Heather McNamara runs away and tries to kill herself through an overdose, but Veronica stops her before she can complete the deed. The social commentary in this section of the musical is clear, obvious, and painful to think about. Our society ridicules people for having and sharing their feelings. Teens are teased and bullied for not fitting in or having the same opinion as a larger group. Heather M. sings about how she will be turned on by the school if she says the wrong thing or wears the wrong outfit. School society is cutthroat, and people who make a fool of themselves or show emotion are preyed on by the stronger. Hypermasculinity is incredibly toxic. If a male tries to show emotion or shows interest in non-traditionally masculine practices, he is shunned, ridiculed, and bullied. Heather M.'s feelings of depression and suicidal thoughts are invalidated by the school and she is mocked for having them. This shows a disturbing similarity to the way real thoughts of this kind are treated by teens today. Finally, we reach the ending of Heathers. Veronica stops JD from blowing up the school, and JD dies. Veronica returns to the school, and the final song is 17, Reprise. This takes the originally romantic and misguided song and turns it into a song of proposed recovery. Veronica points out that all of their problems are not magically solved and will go on, but they are still young, and they will recover with time. This ending is semi-ambiguous in this way. Heather Duke is still there, and the tragedies that have befallen the school are still present in everyone's mind. Heather McNamara has not magically recovered, and Martha is paralyzed for potentially life. No one leaves Heathers with a traditionally happy ending. However, the characters look forward to recovery, and to allowing themselves to be 17 years old. They realize that their problems do exist, but that they can persist through them, which is an incredibly fitting and hopeful ending. I hope you enjoyed this video essay. This is my first video of this style and I look forward to potentially doing more videos like this if this one does well. Maybe an analysis of the characters in Dear Evan Hansen. Either way, thanks for watching. And subscribe for more mediocre and semi-intellectual content. Maybe an analysis of the characters in Dear Evan Hansen. Either way, thanks for watching. And subscribe for more mediocre and semi-intellectual content.